Well, hello everyone. My name is Scott Barrell. Thank you very much for that introduction. Today, I'm going to be talking about vertical assets, how Park City established our vertical asset program, and how we are using them with Cityworks. Okay, really quick, for those of you who aren't familiar with Park City, we're a small resort town located in the Wasatch Mountain Range. We're about 45 minutes away from Salt Lake City, Utah, and we have lots of ski resorts and mountain bike trails in town, lots of fun stuff. Um, as a water utility, we have several challenges, some of them which include we have a population of about 8,000 people with a huge surge in water demand during the winter. Being located in the mountains, we have a couple thousand vertical feet between our highest and lowest points in our service area. And some of those other items just kind of demonstrate that although we are a small municipality, we have a fairly complex water system. For a little background on our GIS and Cityworks programs, we have a pretty solid GIS program when it comes to our horizontal assets or horizontal data, which includes standard GIS data such as points, lines, and polygons, which represent things like pipelines, meters, hydrants, things like that. But when it comes to our water facilities, specifically our treatment plants, uh, we've had some major problems. Uh, uh, our pump stations, as you can see up here, have been populated with horizontal data. And starting out our Cityworks program, everything, all the work orders and inspections were based off of those features. However, as you can see with our treatment plants, our GIS capability just hit a total wall and we are unable to inventory anything. And we have two treatment plants and we're building a third. So this is a pretty big issue. Here is one of our rooms in our treatment plants. And as you can see, there are pipes going everywhere in every direction. There's assets just crammed together and stacked all on top of each other. There's so much going on. If you tried to draw these assets out like our pump stations, it wouldn't really be legible or would be really difficult to navigate in something like Cityworks or ArcMap. Here's another room showing a membrane rack, actually 4 membrane racks, and they have loads of assets just all on top of each other. Some of them are the size of like a deck of cards, and so it would be really hard to represent them as like a point layer. Um, so long story short, we had absolutely no assets of our treatment plants inventoried in GIS, which means we couldn't do any work activity or maintenance work orders or inspections. So to mitigate this, a couple of years ago, we decided to launch our vertical asset program, not just to inventory our assets, but also organize them in a meaningful way and to be able to enable us to be able to do work orders and inspections and things like that on these very important assets. We decided to do this entirely in-house using our own resources, which essentially means me and a handful of other people were responsible for launching this program. A lot of you might already know what vertical assets are, but just a quick recap. Vertical assets are assets comprised of multiple components, or they are components themselves. They are typically inside complex facilities and sometimes referred to as above ground assets. They are often stacked directly on top of each other or configured in such a way that makes them not easily represented with your standard GIS data or on a map. These assets are records and object tables or tables in a database um, with relationships to other tables, groups of tables, or features in some form of a database structure. And although these vertical assets lend themselves to very complex facilities, they can also help represent much simpler data, as you'll see at the end of the presentation. To start things off, to start this program off, we already had a water facilities polygon layer, which you can see here. All we needed to do was divide the treatment plants into different polygons, and we split them up by the actual rooms in these plants. The next step was deciding which assets we wanted to capture, what we wanted to capture. So we created about 30 object tables to represent everything that we wanted to capture. we group those object tables, which you can see they're the little red tables in the bottom. We group them into systems, such as, for example, all of the pumping tables would go in the pumping system, the HVAC tables in the HVAC system, et cetera. And once we had all that established, we created this database structure, which is hierarchical, starting at the water facilities polygon layer up top, which is then related to the system level or the system tables, which they're tables themselves, but they don't have any assets. They just help group the object tables, which is the third level. And this level is where all of the assets live, or all the records and assets are. So this is how Park City set up our structure. It's really customizable and you can configure it any way you want. We originally started with 4 layers, but after a while, with a process layer, but after a while, we kind of determined that our system wasn't necessarily complex enough to justify that extra layer. So we changed it to 3 and it worked much better for us. Unfortunately, I can't get into exactly how I set this up or the details about it, but I'm more than happy to share some more information. So please reach out to me after this, and I'm happy to send some more stuff if anyone's interested. Okay, so we set up our database structure. We started collecting all of our assets through collector using this database structure. I don't have any pictures, but we did use this structure in collector as well. And we configured everything in Cityworks. Some big steps, but I'm kind of glossing over. But let's jump into it. How do our vertical assets and the vertical asset structure look in Cityworks? As you can see, here's one of our treatment plants, and I've selected one of the rooms highlighted in red there. When you expand it in Cityworks, this little window pops up and highlighted right there. You can see the chemical room. Here are the oh, the picture's off, but the systems are below. And if you wanted to expand a system, you click that little box, and highlighted in yellow right there are the object tables, and below are the assets that are associated or related to that chemical room. So what's really, oh, and this whole thing, this little structure is called a asset hierarchy. And what's really more impressive here is the assets that aren't being shown. In our system, we have about 3,000 vertical assets collected, and it's awesome that we can instantly sort through all this stuff to find the exact assets we're looking for. And it's so much faster than trying to search through that asset, the asset search tab in Cityworks. So this is a really efficient way to do this. All right, so here is one of our pump stations represented traditionally with the horizontal data, and there are about 20 or so assets in there. Here is that same pump station with all of these system tables and object tables expanded. Uh, as you can see, the vertical assets allowed us to capture way more assets than we did with the traditional horizontal assets, and we have about 100 for this pump station. And all of the official kind of inventory and all the Cityworks stuff now for anything inside of a water facility is now pointed at these vertical assets. This is also a good demonstration of why we set the database structure up the way we did. If we didn't have that intermediate systems level, the drop-down, the asset hierarchy would look something like this. And there's just a lot to look at and a lot to sort through. So we determined that kind of having that systems level really made things much more organized and easier to sort through to find the assets. All right, so a quick recap. In the past, to create work orders, we would select these features in the pump stations to create work orders and inspections off of and stuff. But now we no longer do that. Instead, we select the polygon itself and then navigate through the asset hierarchy to find the assets that we are looking for to create work orders and things off of. So this is how our vertical assets look in Cityworks. Now we're going to briefly talk about how we're using Cityworks with vertical assets in our department. Starting with the distribution group, they've been using Cityworks the best, and they are our best group of Cityworks users in our department, primarily because they started a long time ago when we had Cityworks running off horizontal assets. Here are a list of work activities they do. They work with meters, or they work with motors, excuse me, valves. They do daily rounds, inspection on SCADA equipment, and all sorts of stuff for our 21 pump stations. Here is a quick example of a inbox for our pump and motor maintenance inspections. Pretty straightforward. And yeah, as you can see, as for a general work order, you can't tell if the asset is related to the work order, if that's a record in the table or pointing at a feature. So this really made it the transition really easy for the end users when we transition to the vertical assets. All right, really quick, we're going to move on to the treatment group. They are new to Cityworks and GIS, primarily because they had no way to interact with it until we developed the vertical asset system. And because they only work inside, they're only working with vertical assets. Here is a list of the work activity that our treatment group does. And we're off to a good start, but we estimate we're only about a quarter way of the way complete with what we want to do with Cityworks. However, those first two items, the instrument calibration and verification work orders, is a huge effort, and that's a major milestone for our treatment group. It consists of about 300 very important work orders every month that we're now capturing in Cityworks. So they're doing an awesome job. Okay, just want to show everyone really quick what or how the vertical asset structure looks in Respond. You can see I've selected a polygon in another one of our treatment plants, and below or the system levels, which are related to it, highlighted in yellow, kind of expand below, and then the assets expand below those. So it's very similar to how it looks in the other format. Here is a example of a treatment dashboard, pretty standard. Here is another analyzer verify work order. And one thing pretty standard, but one thing I want to mention is when you open a work order with a related asset, it zooms to the polygon that it's still related to, especially in that split screen mode. So pretty cool stuff. All right, really quickly, aside from the water department, I also manage the data for our streets department. And one day, after I was working on the vertical assets for treatment, I was trying to take a break with the traffic sign data. And after a while working with it, I was kind of like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to convert this into some sort of vertical assets as well. And it's really a similar concept, but just magnitude simpler. So this, this is nothing necessarily new or special, but in a way, it's a type of vertical asset. And yeah, it's an incredibly simple, but yet effective form of vertical assets outside of a, complex water facility. So where is Park City going with vertical assets? Aside from furthering developing our Cityworks and things like that for the various groups we have, we are also in the process of building yet another water treatment plant, which, as you can see, is more complex and intricate than the last ones. And so we are going to need to create new object tables and new systems or groups of tables to be able to capture all that new information for the new treatment plant. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your time. Really happy to be here to talk about what Park City is doing.